Well, good morning. My name is Richard Seeline. I'm the executive director of the Resilience Innovation Hub, which has helped organize a number of these types of national town halls and webinars over the past few years, focused on public-private philanthropic partnerships around pre-disaster risk mitigation. And you'll see a little bit more as we go through this morning how we are working with a number of different organizations: insurance, reinsurance, mortgage, financing, real estate development, and especially community leaders and community organizations across the country. What we wanted to do today was share with you where we are with the Resilience Community Navigator program, which is a part of our Resilience Community Trust. But we also wanted to get some feedback and insights from those who are gathered on the phone with us now on Zoom. A number of folks wish they could participate, but scheduling didn't allow. So we are recording it for them to review and come back with some interest about these next steps that we are going to work on. So we've got a pretty robust agenda to walk through. We'll talk this morning about why this, why now, why there is a sense of urgency. None of us need to be reminded what's recently occurred in Florida, North, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. At the same time, we've had fires and different types of disasters and perils across the country. We'll talk about what is a community navigator, and then I'll have an opportunity to introduce our strategic technology partner, Irv Sloan from Navigating Gray, and he'll share where the platform is and how this will ultimately be customized for community navigators and what we call neighborhood navigators. Then we'll pause, look to get some insight feedback from you. There's two other tools that I wanted to share with you that we are beginning to put into our larger toolkit. Thought that we ought to take advantage of your time and efforts. And then we'll close out before 11 Central with a call to action, which is really looking for how we can launch 3 to 5 or so pilots in early 2025. So we'll send you the deck as well, because you'll see that I am no slack to ultimately filling up every corner of a slide. But I wanted to emphasize to you all that, again, this is just a small slice of 1 week in the past year about all the articles that are coming out across the country dealing with the cost of repeated disasters, whether it's insurance, going up, mortgages and financing being priced differently. There is a significant economic, fiscal, financial, and obviously a societal impact from all of these disasters across the country. And we're looking at every type of weather, water, and man-made types of disasters, which goes all the way back to COVID as an example of a man-made scenario. So when we look at this, where there's been $4 to $5 trillion of losses over the past 40 years, but 50% just alone in the past decade, and disasters are not being reduced in any way. Matter of fact, this new phrase, intensification of storms and events, really leaves citizens, neighborhoods, and communities very little time to be prepared if they're not already. That is one of the underpinnings here. The second is that we now know, after watching for the past 10 years, and especially the past 3 to 4, that low to moderate income communities and neighborhoods are profoundly impacted, proportionally different than other parts of communities. When you overlay both disaster vulnerability and social vulnerability, it is pretty clear that the preponderance of some of the economic, financial, and societal impacts are proportionally hitting these neighbors of ours, and that therefore there really is a value of community resilience for all neighborhoods and all parts of communities, but especially where we can push in and collaborate and partner with folks in these neighborhoods who are truly seeking not another survey, not another study, who are really seeking the resources and the ability to make themselves thriving communities, not just surviving, which is an underpinning of all of this. So we launched several months ago what we call the Resilience Community Trust, which is a 501c3 nonprofit investment vehicle for corporate philanthropy, foundations, and donor-advised funders to work side by side with us and with communities to invest around future-proofing neighborhoods, and especially our focus on low to moderate income communities. So we've been joined by a few of our folks on the board. Obviously, you'll hear from Irv Sloan, but we have an array of expertise that we've assembled to help guide the community trust. You should know that we are able to create and will create sub-community trust. So while we have this umbrella available to us and to you for capturing all types of capital to be invested into these communities of focus, please know that we've worked diligently to be able to set up a community trust within your community or within your city or region. So these are tools, again, for you and us to explore. You'll get a chance when you see the deck, the array of the expertise. Bonnie Canal is a nationally known business and community continuity expert based out of New Orleans, all the way over to Ben Money, who is Senior Vice President at the National Association of Community Health Clinics. That's the 6,000 community level clinics. Vince Davis is advisor at Feeding America, which is the food banks. You'll get a chance to see who we've assembled here. But again, they are a part of the expertise and the networks because each of them has relationships in your communities and across the country on which we can build coalitions with you or support coalitions you've already got in place. Now, let me jump into what and why we've been looking at these community navigators. And I know there's a lot of words on these pages, so you can read faster than I can, but I just want to emphasize what our intent is. It is clearly a lot lower cost for citizens. It's lower cost for elected and appointed officials. It's lower cost for employers, any part of the community, if we are actually what we call the blue sky investment, where we're focused on pre-disaster risk mitigation and helping communities thrive. It has become pretty clear, and while there is no criticism at all is not intended about the country's focus on response and recovery and rebuild, we are more than honored to have a number of representatives from offices of emergency management who we've had a chance to discuss this program with as well. But we know inherently that it is more expensive to constantly recover and rebuild, and especially on the rebuild side. So the intent is to find and work with individuals in your communities and across the country, many of which are already in place, to help find the way to deploy more knowledge, more information, but most importantly, more resources and dollars at the neighborhood level in a way that it goes beyond the traditional form of a disaster case manager, who is typically a lot short time, very focused for a period or location. What's become very clear is the nation needs individuals who are 24/7 really working at and on the ground with communities and neighborhoods to address some of the issues that you'll hear about more. So when we talk about a community navigator, as you can see, integrating, coordinating, collaborating, and delivering, I'm going to work up from this. A number of studies have been done. Academic, national academies, FEMA, NOAA, others across the country have said it's a 1-to-6 or better cost benefit if we invest ahead of the curve. Meaning if we have people with the opportunities to have the tools, the access to information, and all of the ability to connect the dots around resources, it will generate a 1-to-6 or better cost benefit, meaning lowering down the cost for rebuilding. Second of all, it has to be collaborative. We're not just parachuting individuals or suggesting to parachute individuals into communities and neighborhoods. These are individuals that will work side by side at a hyper-local basis on the ground and come from community-based leadership already. Third is, how do you ultimately coordinate across a lot of different stovepipes? And I'm going to pause in a minute and share a 2-minute video clip of what we did in an interview with Francisco Sanchez from the Small Business Administration's Disaster Programs, Disaster Loans Program. And then last but not least is this integrating. How do you ultimately integrate all the different work that's being done? We're not seeking to take away or take over. We're really trying to be more efficient and effective about integrating different capabilities, different resources, different tools, some of which you'll hear about today. So that's kind of the basis of what we're looking at as a community navigator. I'm going to pause for a moment, hopefully, and do this correctly. And I will pull up this, and hopefully you all can, somebody will tell me if you can't hear it. I will try to make sure that it is all up.
We're the first agency that's on the ground with FEMA from day one, sometimes before day one.
Right.
And we're the ones that put capital in the hands of the disaster survivors first. It's just recently launched a business resilience guide that for businesses based on threat, right, whether you're susceptible to wildfires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, any of those things, what you can do operationally to be more resilient as we do that homework for them. Or what's something low interest, low capital that you can do right now to again, to what you can do that takes much more capital to do that, to that for businesses, right? Whether you're susceptible to wildfires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, any of those things, what you can do operationally to be more resilient.
Are you sensing a little bit more of an awareness that we need to make a pivot in how we do risk, and that is to get really ahead of it and make the investment there?
We're now at all 4 phases of emergency management, preparedness, response, and recovery.
Right.
All at the same time.
And rebuild.
Back to back.
And rebuild.
And rebuild.
Yeah.
To give you just some real context about that, in 2017, we were averaging $1 billion disaster about every 22 days, about every 3 weeks.
Right.
At the rate that we're going, even at a very conservative rate of the increasing number of disasters, I know a lot of people don't believe in climate change, but you just take the numbers, the most conservative estimate of how that continues to grow. Within the next 5 years, we'll be averaging a $1 billion disaster in this country about every week, or just short of a week. What those resilience navigators can then do is say, hey, Richard, like there's an SBA program, let me talk to you about what you can do.
Right.
A couple $100 for the straps on your roof. This is what we can do for flood doors. These are things we can do for wind. This is the things we can do for flooding.
And fire.
Because that's, I mean, all of those kinds of things that the community navigators can do, can help educate for those communities of what they can do to mitigate. And it's a local and trusted source. And the other thing is help people navigate through the complexity of some of these programs.
Your success is to not do this business anymore.
Right. No, that's when I was in Harris County, I said, I want to work myself out of a job, and people are prepared for the disaster to come. I would like not to have to offer SBA loans. That's our goal. Right. Our goal is to do that less.
Right.
But we're doing that more. So we've got a long way to go. But there's a lot of opportunity here. What I'm really excited about the work that y'all are doing with the Resilience Hub is bringing insurance together.
So that was an opportunity to sit down with Francisco, who comes from originally the Harris County Office of Emergency Management, and now is running all of the disaster programs and loan programs at SBA, and is the liaison across the entire whole of government enterprise for working on these aspects of resilience. So I want to share just a few more items as background, and then have Irv share with you how we have certain tools and technology to support. One of the clear indications of where resources are needed the most are at homes, housing, and neighborhoods. You all may be aware, I had to be reminded, that, for instance, 70% of SBA's funds for disasters go to homeowners, not small businesses, but homeowners. HUD, FEMA, number of federal agencies, those programs all cascade down through the states and down into communities. There's a number of other resources that we're looking at, again, foundations, corporate philanthropy, others. We know that we could fix the sticks and bricks per se. That's an opportunity that we'll be making an announcement around with the Institute for Business and Home Safety, IBHS. But the other part to it is, again, at the bottom of this graphic, food and nutrition, health and well-being, access to communications, looking at alternative energy, alternative water sources, obviously transportation, and the ability to not just get to a job, but get access to training, which is a part of what a community navigator is. It is a part of the workforce. So this is what we felt. And again, I am not going to read these bullets to you, thank God. You can weave through them. But what we're looking at is identifying individuals in our first cohorts of 20 to 25 individuals per pilot location. We're looking at individuals that are actually already employed at the public, private, and philanthropic levels to be part of this first cohort. We will put stipend dollars into play with their host employer, but it is individuals that are already on the ground. And then the next set of cohorts will come from individuals that are seeking to be employed in these areas or need to, in a sense, move to a position that provides them such a role as a community navigator. We are coming to the table with a significant amount of data as well. Over 32 billion data points at the census tract level. And what we felt was that the community navigators, stakeholders, our coalition partners, such as you, we felt that there was a need to have a persistent amount of knowledge, not only about the risk, but also where there were opportunities to address very specific needs within those census tracts, but to use that data as a means of looking at performance. Are we actually changing individual families, neighborhoods, lives? Are we actually moving the needle forward? The other part is obviously how we're going to give navigators access to training, to the credentialing process that we have developed. We have significant amount of content on which to train or, in a sense, upskill navigators in this first cohort. We also want to work with you and communities, and especially community colleges, in furthering the use of the training component and always making the training a dynamic, because there's new things to learn. There's constantly best practices to share. Now, this is kind of our way of looking at some initial, intentional impacts from what we're talking about. How do we impact public sector, private and philanthropic sectors? How are we a force multiplier as well for all of these federal dollars that are now coming into communities where the phrase capacity building or technical assistance is one aspect of that grant? So when we look at public, private, and philanthropic sectors at the local level, we know that there are certain funding sources now that are beginning to look at implementation, and that is a way for us to link and connect the dots of success. Those dollars that are coming from federal have certain performance metrics that need to take place. But no matter what, every one of these communities in need ultimately know what they would like to see already happen now to limit the blue tarp syndrome. For instance, in the top 10 disaster areas of the nation, there is anywhere from 10 to 15% of the homes that still have blue tarps several years after a disaster. There's still the resources that are needed to help individuals overcome food and nutrition gaps, access to mental health, and especially mental health caused by persistent levels of disasters. So think of this, that our measures of success are built into a performance dashboard that comes with being a navigator and a part of the 20 to 25 individuals that we'd like to suggest need to be recruited in each of our pilots. Now, I'm not going to read this again, thank God, but what we've had an opportunity to do is think through, based on some previous gatherings that we've had, including 2 years ago, a small working side session at the U.S. Chamber's annual Resilience Summit. What we've looked at is, when we talk about what are the faces of a resilient community navigator, we've tried to think about and listen to where navigators per se have actually already been operating. So for instance, in my own backyard, there is a bank that had 3,000 individuals living in their new tower that they had just opened right after Hurricane Harvey, meaning the tower was open before Hurricane Harvey, but 3,000 individuals, they were employees and their families. What also began to happen is that their branch bankers started working with their hyper-local neighborhoods that were also recovering and beginning the rebuild process. So we know that at the private sector level, banking institutions, energy and power companies, there's a whole array of private sector companies, firms that we already know have some form of a navigator, and it may be under their community engagement or their outreach, but that's one source of where we believe navigators exist. Second, obviously in the public sector, we have community, resilience, chief resilience officers. We have different parts of state and local and county and regional institutions, agencies, and departments, public sector health, medical services. We know that these individuals exist because we all have met them, or they are us, so to speak. We want to find ways to upskill that group of existing navigators, whatever their titles are. And then we look at the philanthropy. We know that there's VOADs, volunteer organizations. We know Red Cross, all these different organizations have individuals that unfortunately have had to be called upon over and over and over again, and then kind of move on to their next job or their original scope of work. That's no longer viable. And so in talking with foundations and philanthropic and nonprofits, what we've looked at is, how they are a source for community navigators on a more permanent basis, and how we can work with them on alternative financing of a number of tools that we want to bring into communities as a part of the alternative investment, new investment, or what we call the resilience capital that's available. And last, before I introduce Irv, we've also looked at, strategic partners. And while I just mentioned, on the corporate and institutional side, what we're hearing, and it usually occurs as a kind of a light bulb, that after a major event, so when a power energy company loses access for customers, citizens, they often go into the neighborhoods to reestablish the engagement and communications. One of the things that you'll hear Irv talk about is we're not only seeking to provide the technology platform that Irv will show to the community navigators, to our coalition stakeholders. We want to open it up for what we call neighborhood navigators. These are individuals who, using their cell phones, help collect information, identify constant and persistent issues that are still not resolved, and work with the community navigators so that what we're really doing is we're building, again, this force multiplier. So with that, I want to introduce Irv Sloan and the incredible work that he and his team have been on a journey to deliver. He's going to show you, and I'm going to stop and share and let Irv pull up his screen. But what we've looked at is how to use his platform in support of navigators and support of the neighborhoods in a way that we think is robust and a persistent source of knowledge and problem solving. So, Irv, I'm going to let me make sure I've done it right. Hold on.
If you just give me control of the screen, I can.
There you go. You should be able to do it now.
Okay, let me actually pull up the PowerPoint from where you left off, see if I can pull it up here. 1 second.
Do you want to go live with your screen for the tool, or
let me just pull up the PowerPoint.
Okay.
You just had up there.
And I can pull it back up if that'll be easier.
Yeah, if you want to run the PowerPoint, that's great.
Okay.
I can kind of talk through a few things, and I want to show a quick video. It takes about a 90-second video, but just want to quickly go through this screen before showing the video, and then we'll hop back on the PowerPoint. So good morning. My name is Irvin Sloan. I'm the co-founder and chief executive officer of a firm called Navigating Gray. Navigating Gray was started about 2 years ago, and we're really focused on trying to solve issues, and we call these gray spaces. Issues around climate and resiliency, as you all are aware of, are not black and white, hence they're very gray. And so we've been on a mission trying to develop tools to really understand, what good looks like in terms of responsiveness at the hyper local level. Traditionally, the tools that we've been provided with are census data. Maybe we've had community forums in which I'm not sure how much you guys are aware of, but the average community forum has roughly 20 people who show up. And so these theoretical experts in these communities, they've got it's inside knowledge. And so they're supposed to help the organization who's responding to these issues, understand the community a little bit better. What we've realized is that, with technology, we can get much, much more detailed insights in those communities through the use of cell phones, as well as the use of AI and other technologies. So with that being said, our technology is focused on three key things. One, increasing the effectiveness of the funds that are being used to being deployed in these communities. We want to make sure that the funds actually are effectively being handled and effectively being utilized. We also want to increase the efficiency because, again, a lot of times, as Richard mentioned, the funds get deployed. There's delays in the process. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And so sometimes there's deficiencies, and a lot of times that brings up challenges within the communities. And last but not least is the risk, right? We want to make sure that whatever the funds are being used for are actually being used for in a responsible manner. So no one gets caught saying, hey, you deployed all these funds and nothing ever happened and there's a public outcry. So we want to make sure we also address the risk issues as well. So I'm going to show you quickly a 90-second video of what the platform is, and then I'll kind of get into some of the details. So if I could share my screen, if that's okay.
Yep, you're able to.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, desktop, and I'm going to pull up. Hopefully you can hear the sound is going to pop up here in a second.
You may have to make your screen a little bit larger.
It's good, Richard.
And Irv, the sound is not working, but we'll provide the link to everybody to look at afterwards where they can, again, hear the sound, but the visuals are very, very clear.
All right, I'll stop sharing. Can you hear me again?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you probably didn't hear the sound and theatrics, but essentially what we built is a two-way communication channel between communities and folks who are on the ground trying to, resolve these issues and get the funds to the community quickly. We've utilized cell phone technology to be able to capture various artifacts or types of evidence of what's really going on at the ground level at scale, which has always been the challenge. And so using cell phone technologies, folks on the ground are able to capture pictures, videos, or simply just record their voice with a quick audio file. That information is brought up to the cloud, and then using AI and various analytics, we organize that information, allow for people on the ground to really try to disseminate what is truly going on at the ground. I say that with a grain of salt because in the traditional model, the average person, they understand what's going on roughly 10 miles outside their house. That therefore, oftentimes when we think about the word experts or these folks who are pillars in the communities, in the reality, the average person only knows and truly knows about 60 people. And that means when I say know them, I mean they deal with them on a daily basis. They know their family. They really know them really well. That's what the average person knows. With the technology, now they're able to provide additional context into different neighborhoods that, they just may never, go into. And so alongside the community navigators who are kind of the boots on the ground, we also provide technology allows for them to expand and scale that insight over a period of time. So you literally can see, is the money really getting to the right people? Are the people satisfied? Are there other extenuating issues that, we just never thought about that. We thought that we had a solution by bringing, soup to folks and realized they didn't have spoons. I mean, that's just an analogy. But essentially what we've done is we've created a platform that connects both the mobile channel with a web-based channel that brings it all up to the cloud, allows for you to disseminate the information and ultimately more effectively and efficiently deploy resources right there where it's needed. Next slide. So again, the thought process is really to create this cohort of community navigators who, as Richard mentioned, roughly 20 to 25 in a community. They become quote unquote the lead, and so they will be able to be providing information directly from the community at scale. So rather than having inputs from, let's say, 20 to 25 people, now you've got 2,500 or 5,000 people who are actually providing input at the ground level. And of course, you've got a cell phone that we can really pinpoint, hey, are we really getting insight from underserved communities? Are we getting insight from more affluent communities? Are we getting insight from the west side, the north side? You really get to see where the information is coming in. You get to see it at scale, which is key, is key, and over a period of time. And as Richard mentioned, a lot of times efforts when it comes to disasters, folks come in and they do a great job in the immediate response, but ultimately these folks need help for years and years to come. As he mentioned about what's going on in Houston and other areas where there's those blue tarps, we're able to continue to monitor and see and hear, right, directly from those folks. Here's what it sounds like to be, be a great partner in the community. And so you get those nuances through the technology.
Irv, thank you. And let me play off of that. When we're talking about the training and credentialing per se, we're not really wanting to come up with a new certificate, so to speak, at this point. That may emerge, but we felt was that the cohorts that we'd like to launch with as pilots, obviously coming from public, private, philanthropic employment roles, engagement roles already, but we sense that there are a number of additional learning, additional skills that every one of these individuals that are identified as a part of a cohort are going to need access to additional content. So part of what we are doing in working with Irv and his team is customizing that platform, both on a web-based and a mobile base, to have access to these training modules. We'll also be obviously doing this in person in certain, classroom settings out in the field. But the intent is really, really for us to engage as many ways when individuals have downtime to look at these modules. Let me raise one other part, and then we're going to pause and get feedback from a huge amount of information you've been given. We want to do coalition building, meaning that every one of you in some way are already a part of activities already underway and on the ground. Therefore, we are not assuming that we're, like I said, we're not parachuting in. This is really building from the ground up, bringing tools, expertise, and other resources. But what we really want to make sure is that, and I think, Irv, you gently have said this to me, we know that there's a lot of folks that are influencers. Would that be a nice way? Individuals that have certain high profile that need to be a part of this. But then there's really the folks that get stuff done, boots on the ground, actively engaged in some way or another. They may not even know that they're really a navigator or a community navigator. So we want to build the coalitions if they don't already exist, or help engage different parts of these neighborhoods and communities in a way of supporting the coalition. So you've got a community navigator, you've got coalition partners, and therefore after that, we're trying to open up the door to as many of these neighborhood navigators, individuals on their, in their neighborhoods, in their communities. So I'm going to pause there for a moment and stop sharing. There's been a number of folks sending chat comments. What I'd really like to do is open it up. If you want to raise your hand, however you want to do it, unmute yourself, but to get any thoughts, feedback, questions so far. All right. So now this is what I love doing. So if people don't raise their hand, Charlie, you've been around me enough to know, I start calling the classroom forward. All right. So let me use a couple of examples.
Questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Could you give us some sense of where you're thinking about launching the pilots? Just to get a little grounding in that. And then have folks stepped in and up in some of those locations already to say they want to play this role?
Well, thank you. Good question, Iva. So one part of the intent of the town hall is what you'll see as a call to action in just a bit. But we've been looking at we've been looking at all of the community disaster zone designated, made eligible by FEMA. We've looked at the EPA communities, under, Justice 40. Essentially, Iva, what we'd like to do is identify 5 to 7, kind of clusters of census tracts within 5 to 7 locations, but do it in a way where we're getting geographic distribution, location, community distribution. So we do have a few that we've looked at, but one of our activities today is really begin to plant the seed to see where some of the communities that are represented. I know Ron Prater is on the call. Ron, representing the big city offices of emergency management. We've had a chance, as I said earlier, to talk with a number of, Ron's leadership about how this ties into hazard mitigation and disaster, mitigation in a lot of different ways. Darrell Lucky. Sorry, Darrell, I saw you pop up here, from the city of Philadelphia. Darrell, oddly enough, several months ago, we had an opportunity to talk with former Mayor Nutter about all of this, who remains still very passionate. He's been a part of the Bloomberg Institute, so to speak, up at Harvard on a lot of these subjects. But we think that whether you're folks that are in certain roles with looking at resilience, looking at Gail, I'll reference Gail from the Institute of Business and Home Safety, which is literally profoundly changing fortified roofs, fortified homes through its work and its standard. How do we engage individuals that can use these tools, but also Darrell and others, how do we now work with your networks and raise the bar on these navigators, raise the bar on individuals that are playing certain roles, but we give them additional tools and resources to effectively move that up. Darrell?
I think that this is amazing. It's amazing work that you guys are doing. And I also think that there is use for it in the city of Philadelphia. We have a lot of registered community organizations and CDCs that would be very interested in this tool. One area that comes to mind, we have our lowest lying area in the city of Philadelphia that we know that every 3 years they're going to experience flooding. So this is a community that we are very interested in making them resilient and helping them to be able to create their own community emergency plan. So this would be a great tool for that.
Great. Charlie, I know I'm going to pick on you. Charlie, I know, the significant work that you all are doing, around connecting the dots of insurance and innovation and communities and all. Any sense of what you're seeing emerge in the way of engaging individuals like community navigators? You're on mute.
Sorry. How's that? Better?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, I think the question we always get is, how do you pay for all this? And the answer we always give is, like, how are you paying for it now? A lot of, the protection gap is 40-50%, so that it's flowing through to community members and the municipalities and other stakeholders in the community. That's where a lot of it lands.
Right.
And I think initiatives like this is getting to the point of kind of answering that question. And I think that goes along with a lot of the work that we're doing to try to, like, at a granular level, calculate how loss costs flow through before,
Right.
during, and after a catastrophe. And because we just got to do some of this stuff, quite frankly. Your first slide was like it is cheaper to act earlier.
Yep.
That is true, and there's tons of research that shows that, but budgets aren't locally managed by research. They are managed by like budgets, and we need to kind of show that the accounting at a very specific project level, and that's some of the stuff we're working on.
Great. Thank you. Justin, I know you're on, Justin Noakes. Justin, from your work with and around HEB grocers, for those of you who are not from Texas, it's one of our leading, if not the leading grocer, who also has played a significant role in showing up with water and generators and all. Justin, from your work, of being where you were before, where you are today, are we hitting some mark with what you've seen out there in the way of individuals that are somewhat more permanently positioned like a navigator?
Yeah. Good morning, Richard. Thanks for the introduction. One of the things I really think is really most important, or one of the most important things is, all disasters are local, right?
Yep.
We hear that a lot, and we hear it from emergency managers, and there's a reason for that. And that's because nobody really knows their community or knows their constituents like somebody who is a local emergency manager or a fire chief or a police chief. And I think these are the people who really understand the needs better than anyone. So I think focusing on that and having somebody embedded into the community makes total sense to me. We all have a perception and an idea of where we can help and how we can make a difference, but those who live in the community really understand the needs and the pockets of needs, right? And there are deserts out there from either a food perspective or a services perspective that we just don't understand. And unless you're living in those communities, you really don't understand it as well. So I think again, the local approach is critical from my perspective, and I think that's where having somebody local embedded into this program, or any program, as a matter of fact, is certainly helpful.
Well,
Can I
thank you.
add on to what Justin just said? 'Cause I love what he said in terms about the communities know, what they need best. And I think the other caveat in terms of the effectiveness is that oftentimes, we have these discussions with community leaders. It's the same 20 or 25 community leaders who are at the table, right? And so you find that, that a lot of folks, they don't come to the meetings, right? Maybe for one reason or another, they just don't like to be in public. They have a lot of input. They just don't like it. And so providing a platform that allows for them to provide input wherever they're at, right? Or to allow for folks who are in their community who they really trust to be able to go to them and be able to gather their input in a safe manner, something that you can't replace. Yeah.
Yep.
So I know we're going to wind down. We're probably going to ask you, if you don't mind, for those who have a little bit of flexibility, go maybe 5 minutes to 11:05. But I know also there's other feedback that would occur offline. Do not hesitate. Email, call, however you want to. And look, this is not perfect yet, and it will only be perfect when it's deployed into communities through these types of pilots. So don't hesitate, and I don't think anybody is shy these days anymore. If we're missing something, if there's something that needs to be sharpened or considered, but I wanted you to see, and again, each of you will get the recording in the deck, is we've really looked at this as phases and stages of moving this into communities, and starting at a certain level at a group of census tracts within communities, especially some of these designated areas for resilience. Some people call them resilient zones, hubs, whatever it is. But we wanted you to see, how we put this together. There's a set of budget pieces behind it. So we kind of believe we've done our homework. Now, before we jump to our call to action, I would be remiss in not also sharing kind of in our toolkit. I'm going to ask them to take just a few minutes each. You'll have the links to see. But when we started looking at how to incorporate other stakeholders, parts of the coalition, I got introduced to two additional tools that don't take away at all from the platform that Irv showed or from the larger context of community navigators. But Justin, Rebecca, are y'all on? And do you want me to just click the website and y'all can talk to it for a few moments, and then Matthew will do the same thing as it relates to Lula and Gail? Is that okay?
Yes, sir. We can do that, or I can share a screen. Doesn't matter to me, and we can blow through this as quickly as necessary.
Let me see if I could just save you the time and just pull it up there, and you can you all see that?
No, sir.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm not sure why it paused. Okay, hold on. Let's go back here. Bear with me. See if we can get it to do it again. Okay. All right, you know what? Why don't you pull it up? Since Zoom has not let me do it. So Justin, if you, Rebecca, take a few minutes, just introduce it, and then we'll do the same thing with Matthew, and then we'll do our kind of wrap up and call to action. So perfect.
Are we up and running?
Yep. May have to make it slightly bigger if you can, but otherwise that's great.
Oh, it's not good enough for y'all right now.
Well, that's perfect.
Better?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. I'll stop touching it. How about that? Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity, Richard, to be able to discuss what we've got accomplished thus far. So in partnership with Texas Mutual Insurance, the largest provider of insurance in the state of Texas for employees, partnered up with us as well as Texas State, Dr. Davio here on the line here to discuss as well. We came up with a resiliency primer, right, for Texas small businesses. 99% of businesses in the state of Texas are small businesses, and 40% of them fail to come back after disaster. As a community member, I used to run as an emergency manager. Now I run a nonprofit for search and rescue and disaster space. A lot of what is being said today really rings true for me, right? Disasters start locally. We managed locally. We had great partnerships with businesses, small businesses. We realized that, our community would fail. Some of the smaller cities and communities would fail without the businesses being there. So this is kind of the genesis of the conversation and why we got to where we got. So again, I'm blowing through this as quickly as possible, given the time frame. So we started the Small Business Resiliency Hub, right, where it guide small businesses through the important tasks of staying more resilient and recovering quicker and being there for their community. So we start off by just simply getting ready, right? The biggest thing that we did is getting and distributing alerts, right? As an emergency manager, it was very complicated to get alerts out to our community. We tried every way to Sunday, but that's where all the information was really coming from an authoritative source. It's not Facebook and your local, friend who likes to talk about the weather and whatnot. These are authoritative sources that we're putting folks to and getting them signed up for alerts so that, again, as a business owner, as a community member, you are ready to react to whatever incident is coming or be prepared. And then we step by step go through, right, understanding your disaster risks in your community, how to prepare for that, right, step by step, reviewing your insurance policy, linking out to authoritative sources, SBA, insurance agencies, things of that nature, to help them understand the data, right? Everybody looks at their insurance policies. I don't even know what this means, right? How do we help them recover and get the appropriate insurance that they need? So then we get into the get involved side of the house. Right. We talked to small businesses, we talked to community members, and a lot of them came back saying, well, we recovered quicker because we were involved in the community, right? Whether it was another nonprofit, it was their church, it was another organization. They always were a part of that community. The community paid it back in dividends and helping them rebuild and clean up their homes or their businesses to get back to working and getting their employees back to working. We also connected to volunteering, right? That's important, right? I'm a VOAD member. Texas Search and Rescue is. We understand the importance of volunteers in the disaster space and how we can help move the needle, right, in the response side of the house. And as well, if a business recovers, a small business recovers, typically, again, I found this in our local jurisdiction, they're willing to feed people, they're willing to give of their time, they're willing to give of their resources, whether it's food, it's assets, it's, plumbers, helping, fix pipes and whatnot. So this is a great hub for people to actually volunteer in a very concise and clear manner. Then we go into the emergency information hub, which is the authoritative sources from the community leaders. Might I add, all of this data is hyper local, right, within your community. So if you've got grandma who lives in Muleshoe, Texas, which is middle of nowhere, Texas, right, and you want to know what she needs resource wise or what the community members are saying, right, you can get that information. So all the local information from the county, from the state, federal schools, right. You can also get the local weather data, the utilities map, what utility partners you need to call, look at the outage map, all your transportation, and as well as local aid, right? As a disaster hits, locals start popping up, right? You got your marks, you got all these other opportunities, these points of dispensing to provide resources to the community. Again, we're going hyper local and saying, here's all the resources that you can get if you need them. So then we go to the after side of the house. I zoomed in too close. All right. After, it's time to recover, right? So we've got timelines for each step. First step, right? Ensure your safety of your employees, right? Employees should be number one because they need to come back and help work, right? And bring back the community. We've got our insurance claims and government assistance. Again, like what Richard was saying, going out to the SBA, FEMA, all those other opportunities for funding, helping with that stopgap, right? And helping folks get back into recovery mode and getting back to their normal life. And then we get back to giving back, right? It's super important, right? The circle of life. Know how to give back to your community so you can learn more about giving back to your community, and then also finding local volunteer groups and volunteers to support. Again, a more resilient community is community. It's holistic, right? It's focused on community and bringing business, right? Breaking down the barriers between business, nonprofit, and for profit, right? And government, right? Bringing all of those under one umbrella to move the needle and make things happen. So that's everything in a nutshell. Again,
Justin,
that's a lot of information.
Let me tell you, you did that like a 10-minute elevator pitch. So congratulations. I know I put you through your exercise. I do want, we will set up a separate opportunity for folks to hear more, but thank you, Justin, for doing that. And I think folks are beginning to see, hopefully, it's not just me, on how we're trying to connect the dots, from how ultimately a navigator in these neighborhood navigators can have additional information. Justin, thank you. And obviously the link will be there. Matthew, you want to, Justin, reshare the screen? There we go. Matthew, you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I'll make it extra quick, and I'll share my screen really quick.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let me do a little interesting setup on this, because this is kind of the lens getting a little bit further out. I got introduced to Matthew and his team at Gale, and one of the issues that we have found is that, especially during and immediately after an event, people are calling any place to get help. Whether I'm calling 311 or 911, or I'm calling, my local power supply. What we've heard is these call centers, especially some of the non-governmental call centers, are getting all kinds of calls. Some of them are very tragic about not knowing where to help guide somebody. So with that in mind, what we got introduced to is a very novel approach to supporting 311, 911, but also supporting communities and community organizations almost in partnership with community navigators, to be able to find information in a relatively novel and quick way. So Matthew, hopefully that was not taken away, but gave you a little lead in.
Oh yeah, it's super helpful. First off, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. Quick background that I think will be relevant to you all is I grew up on a small farm in Florida. Lived here my entire life, had to deal with a number of hurricanes and natural disasters. And so I'm very aware with all the chaos that goes on the moment the hurricane passes. I have family that my older brother's a trucker, has about 25 trucks, and there's a lot of natural disaster cleanup work with FEMA. He the people you see on Twitter that are like on social media that are waiting for DeSantis to give him the green light to start helping and picking up stuff off the road the moment the hurricane passes. That's my older brother and his company. So I have a very intimate understanding of what this world needs. One of the things that we recently came out with was a product called Gale. It's an AI that speaks like a human, and it's trained for very nuanced industries like insurance, which it ties perfectly into all the stuff with natural disaster. What's really cool about Gale is you can essentially build your perfect call center employee or representative. You can choose the accent, the language, a personality you want it to have. And given how strapped resources are after all these natural disasters, instead of having a call center with 3 or 4 or 5,000 people and trying to figure out how you're going to deal with all the real estate and infrastructure that comes with that, we now have Gale that can manage essentially no limit of phone calls at any moment in time. And again, you can build the perfect AI to have the voice, personality, tone, and all of that. And so I'm going to show you quickly how easy it is to have Gale just launched. And so it's as easy as coming here, choosing what script you want Gale to call. You choose Hurricane, you choose what list you want Gale to call through, and then you press create campaign. And right there within 2 seconds, you can have Gale call everybody in the state or your local community and walk them through the exact talk track that you want Gale to have. It's going to sound like a human. It's going to give the customers that sense of, hey, somebody cares. And you can give it whatever information you want. So Justin, if you ever wanted to upload all that information to the Gale brain so it could answer questions on anything, we could very much do that. If you wanted to make outbound calls, we can do that. If you want to make it inbound calls, we can do that as well. And so you really get to train Gale to be your perfect representative. And I'm just gonna call Gale relatively right now, really quick, so you guys can hear what it sounds like. And I'll let you get back to your day.
Hello.
Hey Alex. Hey Alex. I'm here on call. Actually, you know what? A hurricane just came in and swept my house. I don't have a roof, and so I'm trying to figure out like how to handle this situation as I wait for emergency response services.
I'm really sorry to hear about your situation. Please stay calm. Can you tell me your location or zip code?
Yeah, I'm in zip code 33183. Can you guys hurry up? My mom, a tree fell on my mom's leg, and unfortunately, she's in quite a bit of pain.
Help is on the way to your area in zip code 33183. Please keep your mom as
You know what? Me lo puedes explicar en español, que así me siento más cómodo.
Claro. Ayuda está en camino a su área en el código postal 33.
That's awesome. Thank you. And so you kind of saw there, you can give it whatever personality, talk track, accent, dialect, all of that different stuff. If you want to have it speak Arabic, French, Chinese, whatever, you can have it do that on the fly like this. But that's kind of what we built at Gale. And so as you're all thinking about emergency services and being a bit more proactive, you can use Gale to call everybody before the natural disaster, let them know here are best practices. Once a natural disaster happens, you can have Gale give them a ring just to do a checkup call. If you want to have a hotline where Gale can answer certain questions and even connect them to certain departments, you can have it do that as well. And so it's really like building your perfect representative, and we're honored to even be considered for any initiatives here. So thank you all.
Great. Matthew, thank you so much. I've greatly appreciate your time and obviously the work that before and during and after. So look, here's our quick call to action. And I know we've gone over by several minutes, but what we would like to do is, based on those who are on the call live now and those who will review the recording, is really get feedback from each of you post this, determine if your community organization, if y'all would like to be a participant as a pilot location in 2025. We're finalizing the request for information, which will have some specific steps and activities as well as, okay, here's what we're bringing to the table. Here's what we're looking, for you to bring to the table with us. It leads to us coming out of that to identify, 2 to 3 points of contact for which we can engage in moving a pilot forward, and especially leveraging the community trust as a funding mechanism. And then last but not least is, like I said before, ask questions, seek clarification, help us make sure that we're shaping all of this to meet your goals and objectives and the long-term value for what I think we are all seeking to do, which is to pivot as much as we can from having to constantly rebuild to what we can actually do to help communities thrive, not just survive. So our call to action is, those who are on the call, those who will be listening, is to let us know at your earliest convenience. We'll do another session with some of your team and colleagues, of course, to walk through this. We've got specifics around budgets and cost and resources, obviously, but our call to action is we really would like to move 3 to 5, upwards of 7 locations in 2025 and work with you all on delivering something that we think is a profound opportunity for what you saw from IRV, plus where we can work with small businesses and other parts of the community through what you just heard from Gail. So on behalf of myself and IRV and those who've been working on this, including our Community Trust National Advisory Board, hopefully we've given you something to not only contemplate, but let's go get something done to transform the nation's persistent issues with disaster and social vulnerability. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. IRV, thank you for your time this morning. And we look forward to hearing from each of y'all very much after this and get your additional response, but also your interest.